Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Haley. It's wonderful to see you.
It's our
I
happy
like
birthday.
the little colored drops behind you make me happy. Very
I love
pretty.
them too. I love them.
So,
Everybody's loving them at the moment, so I think they were a jolly good purchase and installation.
uh, before we put on record, you and I were talking about letting things go. I was joking that I'm not trying to control the world anymore. I learned a long time ago that controlling oneself is the job. But you said, uh, don't I think you said, don't interfere with others. It's, work. I totally agree with you on that. But where did you pick that up, Haley?
Um, it's been a recurring theme whenever I ask for help and I ask for clarity. The recurring message I get is stay in your swim lane. It's none of your business. Sometimes in much nicer words than that, but really it has more to do with unconditional love. And that's sort of been a focus for me, and sort of where I'm moving into is unconditional love, and really trying to understand what that means, and how do I become unconditional love, and how am I unconditional love.
Uh-huh.
And I think my understanding of it right now is that unconditional love is allowing people to have their own experience as they deem fit, not what I deem fit, not what I want, not what I think would make me happier or lessen my anxiety. Unconditional love is respecting and honoring that everybody has their own perspective, everybody has their own path, everybody has their own experience. So I need to get out of the way
Yeah.
can love them enough to say, I honor your choice, go for it. I can also love myself unconditionally by saying, I'm not going to be around that.
Haley, so you're getting this guidance from your guides, your supernatural guides, right? And the Wu Wei, which is the companion book to the Tao Te Ching, the Wu Wei says the exact same thing, Haley.
Mm-hmm.
It says, stay out of other people's business. Mind yourself. It's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and the Tao talks about the Tao flowing through all everywhere, through the lives of good people and bad people. So you're not in charge.
Mm-mm.
You know, we can
Well,
be there. We can be there to respond to questions, right? Offer guidance from our own experiences, but not to interfere.
exactly. And, I think being in charge in this whole control thing is a complex and dual topic, because I do think that we are in charge. We're 100% in charge of how we want to experience this life and how we want to feel. And I think if you take that seriously and you put, for me, the unconditional love motivation on it, then you can allow people to have their own experience. I'm 100% in charge of me, nobody else.
And when we say unconditional love, we're talking about no judgment,
Mhm.
acceptance, but it does not necessarily mean that uh, we hang out with the person who we give unconditional love to, who we really don't much like.
Because it goes both ways. And for me, unconditional love is no judgment, but it has discernment. And that discernment is allowing for the dual exchange of unconditional love. If I'm going to be offering unconditional love to somebody else, I need to be giving that to myself. So if I can allow somebody their own path and discern that it makes me anxious and it's not aligned with my heart, unconditional love to me is saying you don't have to be around that. There is no rule in the big book of life that says you have to put up with that.
So I have a sister who we don't talk much, and I feel like I ought to be reaching out more, but I'm also afraid of, what might take place, that it's better to leave her alone in her own life. Don't even ask, how are you doing? Because you're pushing family buttons that don't need to get pushed.
Okay.
But then there's the part of me that feels, well, you're the oldest. It's your responsibility to check in on, your siblings. You only have two left. So I struggle with uh, uh, leaving people alone and feeling responsibility. Can you relate?
I can absolutely relate. I think the topic that comes up first and foremost there for me is our definition of family. And I truly believe that our definition of family really requires a redefinition. I think the way that we understand family is not entirely true to the soul's purpose, to the truth, to the heart. And I don't believe that it's unconditional love either. I think our definition of family is very much conditional love. So when I hear you saying that as the oldest, I have to take care of everybody, that's a condition. I will receive love if I take care of everybody else. That's conditional love.
Not unconditional.
Not unconditional.
How would you redefine the family?
I think for me and where I have moved into, and I find for me it works very well for me, family is karmic lessons, the closest and the hardest and the deepest core soul lessons. And I think that where we're moving to with unconditional love is regardless of the title we bestow on a person, we should be treating them exactly the same as everybody else. Everybody deserves the unconditional love, regardless of what blood I share with you. And I think, in my practice and in my work, I often see that we tell people to leave relationships with partners because that partner's toxic or that partner doesn't treat them very well. But we tell them to stay in families that are toxic just because they're families.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, when I'm talking with people that are in interesting family dynamics, I always say, right, take off the parental or the sibling label and put boyfriend or girlfriend on that. What would you do? Because it should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And very often they're like, well, if it was my boyfriend or my girlfriend, I wouldn't let them treat me like that. Or I would just step out of the way and let them carry on.
Yeah.
It should be the same.
Yeah. Family. You get this message over and over again that family is everything.
Mm-hmm. It's higher than God. It's higher.
And in some cultures, it's just, it trumps everything. I didn't grow up that way. I had family love, and I liked the idea of family, but none of my siblings have tried to, make McNaught, our name, something that continues from my father and his siblings in the same manner. Some people feel trapped. Their dad was an attorney, so they have to be an attorney and take over the law firm, when it's time. And we've never done that in our family. It'd probably be hard for everyone to take over my role as a gay educator, but we've just all sort of made our own choices and come to our own lives. Speaking of lives, I'm writing a memoir, and you and I talked a little bit about that. And I said I'm finding it a fascinating experience. I was totally intimidated by it when I started because I thought, one, why is anyone going to read this? And two, where do I start? I mean, do I start when I'm born, or do I start with a thought? You know, autobiographies are chronological, but memoirs are not. So one of the things I learned was just keep typing. Don't go back and read it. You can read it when it's done, and then you can make all the changes you want, but stay with the flow. You know, just get right back into where you read the last chapter and then move on. And I'm not paying lots of attention to things that happen in sequence. You know, I jump around a lot to make a point. What I just discovered today was that the gay community changed radically because of AIDS. It coalesced. It experienced anger and felt like it could express its anger. It began engaging in nonviolent protest. And straight people at the same time became much more sophisticated in their understanding of gay people, even though for many they connected the two as inseparable. If you're gay, you have AIDS. One of the things I realized, Hayley, was that I was still working through all of this as an ambassador, you know, on LGBTQ issues in colleges and corporations. I wasn't changing in the same way that my community was changing. I couldn't go in angry to a presentation. That scares people off, right? I couldn't blame people for AIDS or for their lack of support of AIDS. That's not why I was there. I was there to help them get past their fear or lack of understanding of homosexuality and gender identity, right? Are you following me?
Yeah.
So I had this experience. 30 years, I was part of a week-long training in human sexuality. And in the very beginning, I was the only gay person in the room. I was brought in to do the presentation, and everyone else identified as straight, even though they weren't all straight. And as time passed, I started walking the driveway with people who asked me to. So I was part of their coming out process. Yeah. At the end of the 30 years, there were 5 gay men among the participants who hooked together as queers, who sat together as a group in the back of the room and were very judgmental. And I felt left out and hurt and judged. And I was judged because I was not expressing the same anger that they felt. And so they took their anger out on me, calling me an assimilationist and an apologist. You know, that my presentation did not have enough anger in it, right? So on the day of the presentation where I was doing the gay component, it's a very powerful thing that I've created with movies and presentations and experiences. And usually everybody in the group is crying by the time they go to their small group to process. And one of the guys in the back of the room came up and said to my friend Carol, "How come he gets everybody crying and we don't?" And she said, "You're not Brian." No. Because I got them crying because I gently carried them with me into this scary topic of how gay people are treated, instead of uh, pounding them. So I wasn't moving along with the gay community because every one of those five guys worked for an AIDS organization, right? So when they came to work, they were queer and they could say it, and they could be as
Right.
out as they wanted to be. So they weren't used to being surrounded by a majority of people who were straight and who weren't uh, totally educated on the gay experience. So typing that, and thinking about it uh, was revelatory to me in terms of knowing that I didn't really have a choice. I was an ambassador and had been since I was fired at, age 26. I was this ambassador that was brought to corporations, colleges, organizations around the world. And as the ambassador, as the diplomat, my job was not to vent anger. It was to teach. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Carry on.
But it was lonely
Indeed.
because I was not in the same place.
Yep. Nor do you want to be in that place. So it's this weird, like, sort of juxtaposition. Like, I don't want to be that, but I also don't want to be the outcast.
And I don't want to be criticized for what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I once had I was speaking at Cornell, and it was, gay people were getting more and more out and proud and to have their gay groups on campus. And one guy in the back of the room, when we did questions and answers, said, "Are you aware that your book is considered apologist, meaning that I was taking gay issues and making it palatable?" And I said, "No, but I can understand." It upset me that he said that in front of the whole group. So he came up afterwards, as many people do when I finished speaking, and he said, "I hope you weren't upset by my question." And I said, "Well, I didn't understand why you needed to say it." I said, "Did you read my book?" He said, "Oh, I loved it. It was really helpful." And I said, "Well, then why would you be the spokesperson for others who might think it, I spent too much time helping straight people understand an issue. Why would you not just stand up and say, 'I read your book, Brian, and I liked it'?" Because everything had changed.
Mm.
Group dynamics had changed. College groups had changed.
Yeah. Perspectives were changing.
And there were gay people who didn't want to be in the gay group because they thought it was, too angry.
Well, I think, we see that now, like back then, that was the cancel culture. And we see exactly the same cycle happening now today, where it's confusion is just leading people to cancel. And rather than sitting back and sort of answering that very specific question, did it help you? People are more inclined right now just to find something wrong with it, to say that that's not right enough.
Yes. And that's what you mean by cancel culture.
Yeah, I think because we see that today, I think people are so afraid now of what they can say and how they can say it because everybody's afraid of being canceled. And then there's still some people going out there and getting on their pedestals thinking that they are the cancelers, so they know how to talk. I think where we are as society is that we continue in the same patterns, we just call them different things.
The identity politics, which I understand, where people vote according to their identity as gay, as transgender, as white fundamentalist Christian, as whatever they are. And so now politicians have to try to appeal to all the different groups rather than
Politicians created it.
Americans. Yeah, they did. They made it so that we had to come together
I think they,
to lobby.
Yeah, politicians, it's very helpful from a, the way that politics is today and the way that they run their campaigns. It's required of a politician to be able to split everybody into groups and be able to speak to those different groups and try and get them on your side. And having people split up makes things easier to sort of break out the old.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very political campaign. I think it's a political topic. I think it's a political agenda. And I think, part of us where we're hopefully moving as a consciousness is being able to kind of, some of us, and hopefully many of the leaders that we're listening to, kind of take a step back and ask the question, what am I actually doing here? And why? Is this the right definition? And I think if, bringing it all the way back to that unconditional love, if we can possibly look at unconditional love and say, right, if I'm supposed to love my family unconditionally, regardless of what they do or how they behave, shouldn't that be the same for everybody?
Can I switch topics?
Yes.
But stay on the same theme. Hayley, what all the people that you are in your group, like other people who do the work you do, what do you call yourselves?
Nothing.
Nothing?
We're just friends. No. Yeah.
So, okay. So what I was going to ask you, is there any canceling that happens in that group?
I'm very, as you were saying that, and we sort of realized this and highlighted it, that when you see things that you don't want to be a part of, but then you also feel alone because you're not a part of it or you feel isolated, in that isolation, you tend to find some other people that are on the same sort of wavelength or have had similar experiences. So I consider myself incredibly blessed due to a lot of my own work, not just luck, incredibly blessed to be in this space now where the people that are around me have had similar experiences and are seeking that openness. They're seeking that non-judgmental. So we very much allow each other to have our own thoughts and beliefs on certain things without trying to change each other, without trying to get into an argument about it. And it's incredibly peaceful. That being said, it's not a group of 20 people. It's, here in San Cristobal, it's 3 people, including me.
Okay.
In the world, it's possibly 5 people that I can sit in that space and we can share time, we can share words, we can share feelings without judgment. It's 5 people. So I think that is part of the hero's journey, and we hear it again and again. The more that you focus on yourself, the more that you become aware of your being, people fall away. The noise falls away.
You made a minute ago, you said it wasn't luck, right? You were fortunate, but it wasn't luck. And I agree with you. But you worked really hard to be where you are. And you made a lot of personal sacrifices. And you experienced a lot of judgment.
I still do today. I don't think, part of being aware is, having my space, but also being aware of where I live and the time that I live. And that people, as much as I want to be an unconditional love, other people view that differently. And so, coming back to that whole thing about like, this is how I want to live. If I want the freedom to live this way, I allow other people the freedom to do that. My work is not being overly sensitive to their judgment, to their words. And it's an interesting timing that we're talking about this, because just this week I'm sort of writing about nothing. That nothing is still love. Feeling nothing is still love. And with certain people that I've
talk more about that. Say
With
more about
certain
that.
people that I've been working on to not be triggered by them, I felt myself come into the space of nothing. I feel nothing. And if I were to go into any group and say, I feel nothing, immediately they would all tell me, you can't feel nothing. You have to feel something. Stop pushing your feelings down. And I have gone through all of that, feeling my feelings, understanding it, analyzing it. And I've reached a place of nothing, which nothing is the unconditional love. I allow you to have your experience. And I accept that your experience and my experience don't run side by side. So that feeling of nothing is there's nothing you can say, nothing you can do that will change my mind. There's nothing I can do that will change your mind. So there is nothing between us. There's just space. And that's the unconditional love. That's the love that I'm offering to them, saying, please take this space. Do you also know that I'm not going to interfere, which means you're not going to have my presence.
So so in your life, Hayley, there are only 5 people that you feel have the unconditional love for you. You have unconditional love for them, and that you go ahead.
There are people that I interact with on like a daily or every other daily basis. It's my little group, the friends group, I would say. Are they the only people? I don't think so. I think I interact with you, I interact with other people once a month or every now and then. But there is that sort of core group that, I'll go to lunch with or go to coffee with, that I hang out with. And, that is that sort of core group of we tend to get on really, really well. And it's very open, very open.
How did you find them where you live? You said there are 3 where you live. How
I
did you
don't find friends.
you what?
I don't think that there's any finding. There's
Okay.
connecting. There's connecting.
Okay.
And I think
So
the synchronicity of the life experience is that when you're ready for those kind of people to come into your life, they come in. You're connected somehow, like somebody knows somebody, or you end up at the same coffee shop, or you have one person in common, and then one day you just start chatting and you click. I've never been one to find friends, if that makes sense.
it does, because what it says to me is that you don't go and search. I mean, I had coffee with a guy yesterday, and he said, there are people, callers, and those who wait for the call. And he said, I'm a caller. I'll pick up the phone and say, you want to go to coffee. And I said, I'm not one to pick up the phone and do that. I sort of get lost in my own projects, but I'm really happy to do it. I'm really happy to be, I'll get people together for dinner and cards. So I'll be the caller there. But so you're saying that you're not a seeker of friends and have never been?
It's never worked for me. It's always, whenever I've really tried to go and make friends or find friends, it's just felt awful. And I've never actually really made friends. I've ended up being fake friends, where you end up being friends because you just give so much and you allow so much nonsense, and you call that person a friend because they're willing to hang out with you and you don't have anybody else to hang out with. So now you're friends.
Yeah.
So that it's just never worked for me. What has worked for me is just at the right time, these people come into my life, and that's how it works. It's never been a thing. And, they're the callers, and then they're the people that wait for the call. I hate to be sort of picky about that, but I think it depends on the circle. Because, my immediate circle, there is no who called who first or whose turn is it to message now. It's I was thinking of this and I thought of you and blah, 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 blah. And there's the circle outside of that, which is a bit more like I need to actually experience the reciprocal nature of it. It's not as natural or not as flowy, if that's a word.
Yes. Hmm.
And then, you know, the circle outside of that, which is more some formal. And it just, you know, the further and further the circles go, the more formal it gets.
Hmm.
I find that's sort of how my relationships end up being defined.
And do you avoid that, that outer circle where they really don't have that much? What I'm thinking, Hayley, is that post-COVID, right? Ray and I don't entertain like we used to. You know, we used to have 23, 4 or 5 people in for dinner and games. And, you know, we've moved into a smaller house, but if we really wanted to, we could probably do it, but we don't really want to do it anymore.
I know.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. They don't want to do it anymore.
I think that was one of the wonderful things about COVID. It is that it was sort of this first experience where we had to get really clear on who do you want to hang out with and how do you want to spend your time. And I think, you know, as we are, you know, COVID's finished, but we're still going through those lessons. And we're still sort of the laundry's still like kind of being shook out before it's put on the line to dry. We're still learning how to discern between what's important and not important. And I think for many of us that have spent an enormous amount of time on self work, we just don't have any tolerance for stuff that's not important anymore. And it's not, again, I'm using very clearly the word discernment versus judgment. We're not judging it and saying that it's a waste of time or these people are bad. It's just my time is more important on other things.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I,
making a decision.
yeah, and you know, we need humility there because often we think that if we're making the decision that this is more important to me, so then I'm judging another person as not being good enough for me. We have to be humble and kind of get on the same page and be like, you know what, they're actually feeling the same thing too.
Yes.
They're on the other side going like, it's not that important that I hang out with Hayley, but if she asks me, now I feel obligated, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. And it's my turn to have her back
Yeah.
because she had me over.
Yeah, like they're feeling that too. So, you know, let's just get on the same page and help each other.
Can you teach somebody to identify whether or not they're clairvoyant?
Yes. I think everybody is clairvoyant. I think everybody, we are energetic beings, and everybody has the ability to read energy and to feel in and know their purpose from an energetic perspective. So I think everybody is teachable.
Is that what you do in your phone calls with folks?
Yeah. So, I mean, with my calls, sometimes it's just, you know, actual healing of trauma. And once we sort of move past that, it is really about learning the difference between intuition and ego, which is the first step in reading energy. You know, my hope and the reason I do this work, my motivation is that nobody's going to need me for the rest of their life. If I'm good at my job, they're just as good or even better at reading energy after working with me.
And someone else will come along.
Someone else will come along. There's
Yeah.
people on this planet.
Hayley, do you see yourself doing this work long term?
I hope so. I really
Yep.
enjoy it. I'm not one to say this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life because I've learned not to look into the future and pretend that I know the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think it will be along these lines. It may change a little bit, go through a few redefinitions, but I hope I do believe that it will be in a similar sense, in a broader perspective, perhaps.
Are you going to stay where you are now because you move?
Oh,
You
I have
know,
no idea.
you what's that?
I have no idea. I'm very
Oh,
happy where I am right now. I've been inside
good.
for a year. I'm incredibly happy. I also don't know if it's going to be for the rest of my life. And I accept that I don't know. I think
Mm.
that's part of my blessing is being able to be free enough to say in 2 weeks or a month, I think I'm going to go somewhere else now.
I love your freedom.
And it's one of the things that I wanted. So, part of the acceptance is accepting what you want.
And have it actualized.
Yeah. I think very often we want things, and then when they come to us, we don't know what to do with them.
Yes.
And
I
we try and fit into other people's definitions of how to accept it. And the moving thing and how I travel or how I live my life is not easily accepted or easily explained to others.
I've my sort of mantra is, say yes to, if the universe asks you, say yes.
Yeah.
Say yes, always say yes, right? Because if you get into it and it doesn't feel right, you can back off, but don't turn it down. It's coming to you for a reason.
And sometimes it's coming to you for the reason so that you can turn it down. But
Good,
you
right?
still have to say yes to be able to reach that decision point of, oh, I see what this is, done.
Yes. Yeah, so that you build the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to make decisions based on what's right for you, not what your ego feels enhances you
Right. And
with other people.
we're, humans are very interesting creatures. We're very complex, and I think we're somewhat stubborn. And our confidence is built off proof. So part of that acceptance is realizing that I really only gain confidence once I prove to myself that this is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So in saying yes, we prove to ourselves that we know what to do. By saying no, even after we've said yes, we're proving to ourselves that we know what to do. And therein lies the confidence.
Do you remember at what point your confidence with what you're doing changed?
It changes all the time. So,
Yes.
that first click where I was honestly okay doing this work and calling it energetic work was towards the end of 2018. And I had met with an astrologist, a very well-known astrologist, and she said, you have to do this, and I'm going to put you out into my network. And it was her saying, I'm going to put you out into my network, that I was like, oh my God, this is real. This is really happening. And then her clients came to me and they got stuff out of my readings. And again, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is really real. I really can do this. So I remember that feeling of complete and utter panic, followed by a complete and utter peace.
Yes.
But it's continually evolving, just
Yes.
over the last month, I realized that I've stepped up into another level of confidence.
When I first started speaking, Hayley, and that was not my intention. I didn't intend this life at all. I didn't plot it out.
I think that's the beauty of life, isn't it? We never do the things we think we're going to do.
No, and in the beginning, I had a typed sheet of paper, and it had all the things that I wanted to make sure I covered in my talk to predominantly straight college kids. And in that, among those things were the Ford and Beach study that showed that, homosexuality exists in every species of mammal. And the interpretation of Leviticus 18:22. I have them all lined up. the decision by the American Psychiatric Association. And if I was talking and I was wondering, where do I go now? I'd gently walk back to the piece of paper, look at it. And if that paper had been taken away from me, if I lost it, right, I would have been more anxious. But the day came, and I don't remember when I didn't bring the paper anymore. I didn't need it. And if I was to give the talk, well, I did one recently. None of the things I had on this list are in my talk anymore.
No, you have to trust the flow.
You do. You do a dance. I like that word. You do a dance with the people that you're speaking with, and you can see whether they're following or not, or you're stepping on their foot unintentionally or not. But when I spoke to the NSA, it was nothing like my first talk, to college students, because I had a confidence.
And I think you had a knowing, with that confidence comes the knowing that this is the right thing to do and it's going to be okay.
Yes.
I remember very early on, like when you go for interviews, everybody's like, make sure you prepare, make sure you can just spew off these questions and practice, practice, practice. And I think after sort of my third interview, I was like, that just doesn't work.
Yes.
So it was in the interview process that I first started realizing there's only so much preparation you can do. But really it stuck in when I started working and giving presentations where I would have speaking notes and I would spend hours on the speaking notes. The meeting would come, the presentation, those notes were a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, basically what I would do is before I spoke, I would, say to the universe, say to God, all right, you've got this time, use it as you want.
Yeah. And you're
thank you for letting me be the vehicle. And then once it started, Hayley, it just took off and there was no stumble.
Isn't that beautiful? I love that as part of my work. It's so easy.
It is, and it's exciting because that what you're saying is really right
and important.
Now, whether or not they listen, took it in, I did a presentation, I may have told you this, but I did a presentation to, I don't know, 200 to 300 college students on a Zoom call like this. And when I got off it, I went over to Ray and I said, I hit that one out of the park. It was really good. I don't know whether or not they listened, but
that felt good.
I was really good. I was smooth. I didn't, as you get older, you start to forget sometimes, where the conversation started. What were we talking about? That didn't happen to me. And I was worried that it was going to, but it didn't happen to me. And it was exciting,
I love that we're talking about this because I feel the same. It's there's the nervousness before you start, but once you start and sort of really surrender to, I'm just an observer here, I'm just an interpreter, and it starts and you're observing, you're with it. And I think there's definitely times where I know what everything that I'm saying, I've already learned. And I'm just oh, I know this. And then there's times where I'm just I'm learning too.
Uh-huh.
And then there's also times where I'm just I thought that was fantastic, but they looked like they were a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
And I think
if there was one person, go ahead.
We're learning just as much as they're learning too. And I think, we can never underestimate the power of the seed.
The seed?
Yeah, the planting of the seed.
Yeah, I agree. And it can be one person.
Yeah.
And one person.
even if, I have a session with one person for an hour and I'm like, that was the best session ever. Like, I'm really like, they were really into it. And then I won't hear from them. And, for me, sometimes that can be like, did you just read that wrong?
Yeah, I understand. I agree with
But
you.
then,
I used
you know,
to read the evaluations.
yeah. And like, as I'm doing this work for longer and longer, people come back after 2 years and they're like, after that last session, you said something to me and I really get it now. Can we talk more?
Yeah,
And
I
they
I became
do get
less
it.
and less, and I needed feedback less and less as I got older because I trusted that I was good. I really trusted that they got their money's worth,
Yeah.
because I would always ask them, Hayley, before I would speak. I would you have these telephone conversations before you go, and I would say to them, tell me, what is a home run for you? What do you want to have happen in this session that at the end of it you'll feel that the ball was knocked out of the park? And so they have to think, what do we want? And I give them what they want, but I already know what they want before they tell me, because I know what they need.
Yeah. And it's not egotistical. It is very
No, no.
trusting in the work that you're doing. And I think once you start doing purpose work, there is that level of knowing that this is the
Yes,
thing. Like, I don't have control here. I just know.
yes. I trust, uh and you know what's that brings up the whole question, Hayley, of a transition. I read recently on Facebook, somebody was not liking the fact that people were consoling them by talking about their husband's transition. He said that he died. That was it. He died. And so, as you get older, you think a lot about whether or not you really do agree that there is a transition. And um, I I have the hope that there is, and that when you come back with the accumulated knowledge, even if they're not instantly available to you, but you come back with what you've achieved in the last lifetime. But you have any thoughts about that?
I have a wonderful story about that. And I'm trying to remember where I got the story. This is not mine. It was given to me. And it's basically life as a movie. Yeah. So your life, my life is a movie. And it's the soul's movie. The soul is the main character. And when we pass over, we transition, we get to have a review of the movie. And we get to look at the movie and be like, that was great, not so great.
I agree.
The soul has a moment of like, which parts do we want to go in and move from not so great to great?
Yes.
And then we come back and we fix that part of the movie. Rather than it just being chopped and edited and left on the floor, it's fixable, if that's the right word. Or it can be made more whole. So that's how I see things kind of moving and shaking from a soul's perspective. I think that as we become more open in every lifetime to the possibility of the soul and allowing the soul to be a much bigger presence in one's life, that is enlightenment, that we come back into a better experience because we're just fixing little pieces now. We're not fixing the entire movie.
Yes. I identify with that. There actually was a film uh, that was really good, where these two people saw the movies of their lives and had a group, who was judging with them, what was good and bad. And I thought that was a great way, because if, and it's a metaphor, I know, but if you take a look at your life uh, and see where you're pinching, and you didn't really handle that well, and I want another chance, to do it right. Um, I think that that's heaven and hell. The movie is heaven and hell. I think that people sometimes have to watch a movie that they do not want to watch. You know, they do not like what they see when they see their lives. And that's hell. You know,
You know, and it's, again, having the compassion, the unconditional love for that is that, you know, there's been parts of my life that were hell and has made me question the whole reincarnation thing. And why would I ever want to come back into this? And
mhm.
even, you know, today, when I think about, do I think as a soul I'm done on earth after this lifetime, or do I think there'll be another one? And there's definitely been moments where I'm like, this is the last. We are not coming back.
Yeah.
I think that's because I base that 100% on all of the hard things. If
Mhm.
I look at all of the beautiful things and all of the beautiful things that have happened in this lifetime because I said enough, then I'm okay to coming back because that's beautiful.
Yes.
And I think
Go ahead.
you have to reach or experience life with the soul to be able to have that kind of perspective.
You do. I was going to say, I notice beauty a lot more now that I have the time,
Yeah.
you know, to
Nothing's
focus.
really changed. It's just your perspective has changed. Your focus is,
Yes. Yes. And it's extraordinary. You know, when I look out the window, even as I'm talking to you, it takes my breath away how beautiful it
oh,
is.
I'm so with you there. I'm
Yeah.
a little like, even on really tough days, there's still moments where I'm just like, it's a tough day, but that's still beautiful. That's still like,
So
God, I
beautiful.
have that.
Yes. Right. Uh, and and that, you know, it just shakes me up to say, Brian, you are in heaven right now.
We are in heaven. And I know we're running out of time. We did start a bit late, but last thing I'm going to say is that yesterday we had an earthquake and it was in Guatemala, but we felt it here. And
Oh,
apparently I'm the only one that felt it amongst my friend group here in San Chris, which surprises me. But I had a moment, and for me, earthquake, I don't like the feelings of earthquakes while I'm in them. Afterwards, I can have a moment of celebration, but in them, I just don't like it. And so I felt this and I was like, oh, it's happening. And it's not because I'm afraid of things falling or the destruction. It's just feeling is, it's like vertigo on crack.
uh-huh.
And, you know, I had that. I'm like, this is an earthquake. And I'm like, yep, it's definitely an earthquake. I want to puke. And then afterwards, I was just like, how amazing that I felt that. Like, I felt the earth shake.
Mm,
And it's part of that beauty of being fully present and allowing yourself to again feel it all and reach
yes.
a point of nothingness where I was just like, I'm in this place of nothing but beauty.
Yeah. And there's a message there, right? That you were the only one who felt it.
I
It
mean,
doesn't, go
it's,
ahead.
to me it's crazy because for me it was like, I'm like, this is, everybody felt this.
Right, right, right. Well, the ends, but you know that are super sensitive, that that
Yeah,
you feel energy, you focus on it. You know, if you say everyone has it, you have to focus on it. You
yeah.
know, yeah, and you focus on your energy, so you were ready to feel that
And
earthquake.
it was, you know, when San Cristobal is also full of sensitive people too. So that's why it's even more surprising to me that others, because a lot of people here do energetic work. But it was for me. It was a moment of like, hey, we're here. You're here.
Uh,
And then
that and
you being part of a bigger picture. So
that's
it,
a great that's a great place to stop, right?
yeah,
uh yeah, you are part of a bigger picture, but you know your place in it. You know that it changes, but where you are is perfect right now.
even if you're sitting on the couch, it still means something.
Yep. I love you, Hayley.
I love you too, Brian. I thoroughly enjoy seeing you. I hope you have a
Me too.
wonderful weekend, and we'll speak to you soon.
Look forward to it.
Lots of
Bye,
love. Bye.
bye-bye.